Being that I'm Baruch Hashem, I'm Moyel, I would like to focus on a Rashi in this week's Parsha that's an interest for Hilchas Mila. Not the Rashi itself, but b'hoisafa to the Rashi. The pasuk in this week's Parsha, PARSHAS BALAK, Mi Mona Afar Yaakov. Bilam said, how could I be Makabel Klal Yisrael, as Klal Yisrael is a nation that's Makayim. Rashi explains many mitzvahs but offer with sand. Rashi goes through a list in the second pshat, Dover Achar Afar Yaakov Ein Cheshbon b'mitzvahs she Makayim b'offer. There's so many mitzvahs that Klal Yisrael's Makayim b'offer. L'sachrish b'shoyer b'chamoyer. That's a mitzvah not to be chayrish. Do klayim with two animals when doing charisha with the sand. L'sizra klayim. That's a mitzvah in sand. You're not allowed to plant klayim. Efer para. Afar soita. Right? Parshas chukas the para aduma soita. Though it's interesting that Rashi brings different mitzvahs, some with sand and some with afer, with afers burnt, something that was burnt, right? The paraduma was afer, was with something with ashes. Yeah, thank you, ashes. Ad kedei kach, it's something completely different. The Beis Halevi in Parshas Vayera says, when Avram Avinu said, Vanoichi offer va'afer, says the Beis Halevi, that offer and afer is the complete opposite. Sand is something that is nothing now. However, you can make something out of the sand. Afer is something that was something and you burnt it, it became ashes. Dr. Beis Halevi, Avram Avinu said, offer right now, I'm sand, I'm nothing. Ve'afer, and also I both things, I came from nothing and I'm nothing, both chalakim. That's what Avram Avinu is, anivas, both types offer ve'efer. Interesting, Rashi brings both. Al kaponim, so Rashi on the pasuk Mimona Afar Yaakov, that Klal Yisrael's Makayim many mitzvahs with sand. The Medrash in this week's Parsha, the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, Dr. Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, I'll read the Lashon. Klal Yisrael in the Midbar by BRIS Mila v'hoy Yisrael loikhin es ORLO v'es hadam. They used to take the ORLO u'machasen oisa ba'afar midbar. They used to take the ORLOs of the Midbar, the ORLOs of BRIS Mila, and they used to bury the ORLO in the ground. Ukeshaba bilam to come and be makal Klal Yisrael ra as a Midbar moli mar losan shal Yisrael. If sort of Midbar was full of ORLOs. And Meli said, how could I go and be Makabel Klal Yisrael that has the schus of Mila? Agav, it's interesting, how did he see it if it was buried? But Al Kaponim Bilam Ra, he saw, and the Meli said, how could I go and be Makabel? Zok the Medrash weiter, Mikan, from this that we see in the Midbar, already the Doir HaMidbar was noyeg to bury the Orlos after a bris, right? We see, because that's what Bilam said, I can't be Makal Klal Yisrael. Mikan Amru Chachamim, that were noyeg to bury the Orlos. This may be less known for people, it's really relevant for the moil to take care of it, but Makan Amru the minig to bury. I get this question all the time. What do I do with the Arla? What do I do with the Arla? So the Medrash Mikan from here that we see in the Midbar, that Klal Yisrael buried the Arlas, Mikan that the minig is to bury the Arla. We're going to get to it in a minute. What's the mile of burying? Very good. Why? Why to do it? But first, the Makoyer. Interesting enough, there is no Makoyer in Shas. It's not a Makoyer anywhere brought in Gemara. It's a Medrash. It's a Medrash. As a matter of fact, that's 1 second. I just brought an Avram, the concept off of Afer. It's not. It's real.
he was the first person to do BRIS. So he didn't bury the Orlo?
No.
For himself, etc.?
I don't know when it started. I could just tell you that you see it as early as already the Doir HaMidbar was noig like that. I just brought in the Avram and Rashi.
I want to know if they were the first ones or that's the first documented thing like one day before.
Agav, you see that you could learn a halacha from a Medrash. Mekan, a minig al kapanim from a Medrash. Spoke about it last as previous shiur in the night koil hilchas kibbut avaimti mechabed a grandfather. The source is a source in a Medrash. Rashi brings it al Torah. Al kapanim, that's the Medrash. It's brought in the Rishonim bring this Medrash. Tosfos and Yevamos, the Rashba, the Nemukah Yosef, they quote this Medrash, and it's brought la halacha. The Shulchan Aruch in Reish Samachei in Hilchas Mila. The Shulchan Aruch sagt the Shulchan Aruch, Noisnin es ha'orlo b'choil v'offer. You bury it. Brought in Shulchan Aruch. Agav, just on a side note, that's not the discussion, but the Medrash says that Klal Yisrael, when they did the bris in the Midbar, they buried the Orlo. Stellt sich the Shaila, Tosfos asks a question. He brings this Medrash and he asks, Tosfos, what do you mean Klal Yisrael wasn't mal b'midbar? Because he wasn't a ruach tzvainis, and the Mela was a sakana. So what does it mean that the Orlos were in the ground? They didn't do Mila. Tosfos bleib schwer. Lamaisa, these are Rashi and V'zayis HaBrocha. This is a shmuz for itself, but if we're speaking about the Orlos, we just have to bring up the question that Tosfos and Yevamos asks. Lamaisa Rashi, ala Torah, in V'zayis HaBrocha, sagt Rashi, Bris Chodin Tzeiru, Bris Mila, She'oisam she'noldu b'midbar shel Yisrael, lo'imolu es b'neim, ve'im ho'yemolu l'mal es b'neim. See, maybe Rashi is not like that. Okay, Al Kapanim, that's the Shiloh. The Shiloh is if they didn't do bris, how were they arless? The Balaturim, the tour, whose yard site was this Tuesday. The tour says, Mi mona afar Yaakov. Afar is begematria orlo b'choil. This that Medrash says that Klal Yisrael put the orlo b'choil. It's merumis in this week's parsha. Offer mi mona afar Yaakov offers begematria orlo b'choil. If you count it up, it's with the kollel. It's 350 and you have to add one. Sometimes a gematria you have to add in addition. It's with the kollel. Mi mona afar Yaakov with the kollel. It's interesting, the Shulchan Aruch, when quoting this din, the Goyin says that the Makor for the Shulchan Aruch is the Medrash. Lamaisa, the Medrash doesn't say Choil. The Medrash says that they buried it in the Offer. So Lamaisa, the Avud Raham says, the Beis Yosef quotes the Avud Raham says, there's a Makor, a reason for Choil, and a Makor for Offer. The pasuk says in Bereshis, "V'samti zaracha k'choil hayam." So therefore, that's a reason to put the orlo in choil. V'samti zaracha k'afar oretz, to put it into offer. Lamaisa, you don't have to do both. Even though the lashon HaShulchan Aruch is noisnan es orlo b'choil v'afar, you don't have to do both. In Zocher BRIS, he says that it's oiha oiha. You find that in Megillah Daf Chaf Aleph. The Mishnah says, Koyrenas HaMegillah, you read the Megillah, Oymid v'yoshev. You don't have to do both. Rashi over there explains, Oymid v'yoshev, it's Oyha, Oyha. So maybe either or. Why Taka Choil? Why Choil? First of all, the Medrash going on the pasuk says, Offer. Why Choil? So the Levush says, the Goyas Maimon says, that Al Pi the Tur brings that there's a chilek between Minhage Eretz Yisrael and Minhage Bavel, if to put the Orla into water or to put it into offer. Two different Minhagim. Zokta Goyis Maimin is, if you put the Orla into Choil, as Kemavur in the Gemara and Chulin, Choil has a din Mayim and also has a din offer. So maybe if you put it into Choil, it's Efshel L'Kayim Shneim. As Zokta Goyis Maimin is. What's the reason to put the Orla into offer? So we see over here Makoyer, it's a Medrash, brought lahalacha. Why taka to put into offer? So there's a few different reasons. It is quoted b'shem de Zoyer in PARSHAS Lech Lecha, as well as in the Hakdama of Tikkunei Zoyer. And he says the offer is like the offer of the Mizbeach. Right, the Mizbeach in one Pshan Rashi says that it was filled with offer. Al Kaponim, it's Mizbeach Adom Atasali. So Pshat is it's merubas on the Mizbeach, and Memela, this that we do the bris milah is kekarbon, and we put it into the ground kimizbeach as is the Zoyer. You find other parts by the bris milah is also kimizbeach. The Maril says that the sandik holding the baby is also kemizbeach. But al kaponim, the bris milah is kekarbon. You also have the dam of the bris, and memela you put the orla into the ground. Ki'ilu you're putting the orla al gabe hamizbeach. And memela it's brought that you should put the offer into a keli, not just stamp to throw it, you bury it, but put it into offer, into sand that's in a keli, because the Mizbeach had a din of a keli. Another reason, brought in the Lavush, Zok the Lavush, Al Pi Kabbalah, Orla is a chelik of the Chitzonim, of the Yetzirah, of the Nachash. B'chlal we find, this is in Hilchas Milah, there's a piece of Beis HaLevi, that these two parts in Bris, these are, when you take off the Orla, you take off the Ra, and then there's another part also that when you do a Bris Milah, there's a chelik of the neshama that comes, a person becomes, the chelik ha-kedusha comes. But upon him taking off the orla is the bad part, is the tum, is the chelik ha-chitzain, and which is the nachash, zok the lavush. Al pi a pasuk in Yeshaya, what does the nachash eat? The nachash offer lachmai. As is like the pasuk, offer is lachmai, and zok the lavush. There's a pasuk in Mishlei. In Rov Seinacha, if you're soine, the person who doesn't like you is hungry, bring him close to you, achileu lechem, feed him, give him food to eat. The orla that's merumas on the nachash is our soine. The mela hachileu lechem, and his lechem is offer, mela put him into the ground. But often, right when the baby starts off, we want to set this rachanimul on the right track. We want to right away put the Yetzirah, give him what he needs. Hachilei, it's a soine, it's a person's soine. This baby is going to be fighting now for the next 120 years with the Yetzirah. You put the orla into the ground, he should have what the Yetzirah should be busy, should have food. Hachilei ulachem. Another reason, on this note also preparing the child, this I heard from the Moyel Reb Shimon Hassan Lakewood, who had to call me 2 nights ago. He asked me to check a baby. So I told him I'm speaking on Mila, this Indian. So he told me the Chidah. I didn't get a chance to see it inside, but the Chidah says, by the Kollel of Adam Arishan, Vel offer Tashav, before the Chet of Adam Arisha, a person was supposed to live forever. The Chet was Goyra Misa, and a person has to go back to the ground. After a person dies, he gets buried. Lamaisa, there are people that weren't buried. There were people that were not buried. For an example, Eliyahu Hanavi, he never died, but he was. So what happened to the Klala of El Afa Tashav? Zok the Chidah, it was Neskayim with the Orla. The Orla of the Mila of Eliyahu Navi that was buried, that's Velafat Harshiv. Nemela, it's a moiridige Gezach. You know why we buried the Orlo? Because we want to prepare this child. This child has potential to be somebody, Azamin Gadol, that the pshat is that he won't be buried after he dies. It becomes so heilig. What's with Offer Toshav? We'll makayim it with the Orlo. That's like the Chidah, Hafla of a fella. The achrayus for every parent preparing their child. Achrayus from the beginning. We bury the Orlo because this baby, this 8-day-old baby, has a potential to be able to. This should be the key in Velafar Toshav. The Yam Shel Shloima. This I actually got from a different moil, Reb Shimon Schreiber. The Yam Shel Shloima says in Yevamis that the reason, this is already brought in Rishonim, the reason why we do Milas Lahakrish Koyach HaTaiva. And Mameli says you put it into the ground, that's even more Makrish the Koyach HaChoymer. And he says, with this, it's Magbir Koyach HaNashama. The importance of putting the Orla into the ground, it helps more being Makrish to weaken the Taiva from a person, and for Kert to give strength to the Kedusha, to the Nasham of a person. It's not just a minik, it's called a mitzvah. In Moshev Zekenim, in PARSHAS Ba'aloischa, the Bali Atoisvis, he says, Ba'aloischa's bole with a vav, keneged the 6 mitzvahs, the 6 parts of a mitzvahs that there are by Mila, and one of the mitzvahs, he says, is to bury the Orla. We're going to see behemshach of the Shiur in that, let's call it the Halacha Chelek. The Noid Yehuda says that before you put the Orla inside the ground, it's adayin loinasis mitzvasa. Burying the Orla is a Chelek of the mitzvah. And the Bach says in Hilchas Mila, b'schus hatmana zu, zok the Bach, hoitziyonu, Bais Asurim, we were zoicha to go out of Mitzrayim. So Atkan, it's a Medrash with many reasons why to bury the Orla. This is Negeya, Sai during the weekend. This is Negeya, Shabbos also. Yeah. This, we see how many moiridige milas there are of burying the Orla. But obviously you have to know, these are moiridig important in Hilchas Shabbos, sand is muktzah. Sand is muktzah on Shabbos. Norvasi is a din Hilchas Shabbos and Siman Shin Ches, that you could be meichen the sand me'erev Shabbos, and it's not muktzah. If you need sand, you could be meichen it, prepare it before Shabbos. We're going to get to that if you have to do it right away. But let's first see, you want to bury it and you want to do it, put it into sand on Shabbos, not till after Shabbos. It's a 3-day Yom Tif and you're doing it the first day. You want to put it, let's first see if you could or you can't. The Tur brings from Rabbi Yehuda Goyen. I'm going to read the Tur. Mahu lemimol al gabe afra. This is speaking about on Shabbos. In general, shaper dami. Bulvad shlayasa came by Shabbos. You should not do this on Shabbos. Shloyavi offer machutz. Why shouldn't you do a mila al gabe offer shloyavi offer machutz? So the Bais Yosef and the Bach both bring a bala iter to try to understand this Rabbi Yehuda Goyen. The Bais Yosef brings the bala iter. Why not to do it b'Shabbos? The Bais Yosef to understand the bala iter, explains this Rabbi Yehuda Goyen, because sand is muktzah. But if you're meichen the sand before Shabbos, you could do it. Don't do it on Shabbos if you weren't meichen the sand. But if you're meichen the sand, it's not muktzah. And maybe you could do it. Me'idach, The Bach understands don't do it on Shabbos, and even though in general hachana of prepare sand helps, over here, even if you prepared sand, don't do it by Shabbos. Why not? Because we're afraid you might come to do it even when you didn't prepare the sand, because these are minig, it's a mitzvah to bury the orlo in sand, and maybe you're going to come to do it even on Shabbos when you didn't prepare the sand. But maybe even if you did prepare the sand, you still shouldn't do it. So we have over here a machlokes, this that we spoke for the past couple of minutes about burying orlo, a minig, a mitzvah, many milas. Could you do it on Shabbos? Yes or no? Klor machlokes. The Beis Yosef says yes, but on the condition that you prepare the sand before Shabbos. And the Bach says no, even if you prepared. What's la halacha? La maisa la halacha, the Bach himself already is made miu ha'olam noagu heter to do it. And the Beis Yosef, in his chibur called Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef says you do it. The Taz says, he brings already from a Risha in the Sefer Atanya, that you do it. Parsha Shulchan Aruch. Noisnem es ORLO b'choil v'afar, like we said, choil v'afar, v'imu Shabbos, you also do it. However, tzorech shiyu muchanim and b'yid yoyim. You do it, but you have to appear from Erev Shabbos. Agav, this that preparing sand helps, and everybody agrees, the Beis Yosef and the Bach, and the Etzim would help over here also. The Bach just says that it's a gzeira. You might come to do it even without preparing, but Etzim he agrees preparing helps. How does it help? But Etzim, preparing sand has to be done. Preparing sand has to be done for everything. You can't just prepare sand for one. Here you're preparing the sand. Whenever in the world are you going to use the sand? You're preparing sand to bury the orlo. But etzem, this din of preparing sand, you have to prepare for everything. For everything means that you're being meichen the sand before Shabbos to use for anything. Here you're preparing it just for the milah. Zok the Noid Yehuda, that you find this concept of preparing sand, Erev Yom Tov, to be Makayim, when you're going to do a Shechita, to be Makayim, the mitzvah of Kisi Adam. And even though you're only preparing it just for Kisi Adam, it helps. So maybe preparing the sand helps, and that's the halacha, the Beis Yosef of the Shulchan Aruch Paskins, to be able to bury the orlo on Shabbos, you prepare sand the Erev Shabbos. What happens, and this is a lot of times the case, most of the times the case, you're doing the BRIS, and you didn't get a chance to put the orlo into the sand that you have prepared. We paskin the sand is not muksa. You have the sand over there prepared. You didn't get a chance while cutting off the orlo, it fell to the side. You don't want to be distracted taking the orlo and putting it right then into the choil. I don't want to go into it, but between the Mila and the Priya, the Taz speaks about if making the bracha in between when the father is the moyel, and he says you can't stop in the middle to make the bracha, the Yismale full of blood. You can't. So if a person is in the middle doing the Mila, the Priya, and he can't stop to bury the orlo, so the orlo went to the side, you put it down right there on the side. Could you go afterwards and take the orlo and bury it in the sand? So the Noid Yehuda has a tshuva about it, and the Noid Yehuda brings the Marshal. The Marshal is not speaking about this. The Marshal is speaking about when you put the orlo into the sand. Now what? Could you move it? Zok the Marshal that it's muktzah. The orlo, after you put it into the sand, you put it into the sand, it's muktzah. But if you have money on a bed, you can't move it. It's a bosses ledvar lemuktzah. So you can't move the sand. That says you're going to put the arla into this cup of sand. You can't move it. It's muktzah. It's muktzah. Lamaisi says it's different. He says it's bottled to the sand, and maybe you could move it. That's the marshal. That's not the discussion for right now. If you could move that cup or not, that's for the moil to go through la halacha. But is a shaila about moving the knife. Could you move the sand? But the marshal says that it's muktzah. Lamaisi says that the arla becomes bottle. So maybe the arla is muktzah even before you threw it into the sand. Lamaisi Yehuda says no, because adayin loy nasas mitzvasa. Like I mentioned earlier, we said that it's a mitzvah to put the arla into the sand to bury it. Loy nasas mitzvasa. Maybe you keep metal to the arla. He does say at the end of the tshuva, l'tchatchila, you should try to get it right into the offer, a direct hit, so to speak. But if not, avada you could. If you put it down on it's put down on the side. Avada you could put it into the offer. Lenasas mitzvasa. Why l'tchatchila to put it directly into the sand? Because lamaisa, these halacha and hilchos Shabbos, that even a klisha malachte leheter, a spoon or a fork, you're not allowed to be metaltal, it's stam azay shaloi letzorich. So even if it's not muktzah, stam ti metaltal shaloi letzorich, if you could get it in, put it in. But l'maisa, if not, he says, avad, you can put the arla loy nasas mitzvasa. On this note, and like what you mentioned, you asked before, do you have to do it right away? So, in Ois Shalom, that's the Minchas Aluza, the Minkacha it says Sefer Armila, he was a boil, so he has a big arichas, a pia zoyer, that you don't have to bury it right away. He says clearly you don't have to bury it right away. So even b'choil, here we just spoke about the Hilchos Shabbos, that if you didn't make it in right away, it's not muktzah. But b'chlal, he says you don't have to bury it right away. He says, al pi the zoyer, that you're supposed to throw it, and then afterwards you put it in. Al pi this yesod of the Noidi Yehuda that the arla is not muktzah, says Reb Vosner in a tshuva, he brings the minig to be mahapach the arla, that piece, the arla that you cut off, you turn it inside out. They say it's brought a Ma'aseh Ish. They bring that the Chazon Ish said that being mahapach is a skula. Some say liyira shamayim, lezakaron, to be mahapach the arla. So Reb Vosner discusses, could you be mahapach the arla on Shabbos? To be mahapach the arla before you bury it. Dr. Vosner, al pi what the Noidi Yehuda says that loy nasas mitzvasa, it's not muktzah. Similarly, ki mahapach the arla. Just one more nekuda on this discussion. We spoke about burying the arla, the reason to bury the arla. Are you allowed to do it on Shabbos? There's yet another part also. The Medrash says, Lashon HaMedrash, it's interesting, is it just the arla or also the Lashon HaMedrash also is that is dam? Machasenes arlas hadam ba'afar ha'aretz. Arlas hadam. PARSHAS you learn, in the arla, these dam also. In the Maril, he brings two different minhagim, two different neschoyes, girsoyes in the Medrash. Is it also that you bury dam, or just the arla? Of course the arla has dam, but is it included in the arla? Does it just mean the dam ha'arla, or also dam? What dam? To say it's the dam ha'matzitza. The Shulchan Aruch, it's the Ramah, Hagah, on this that the Shulchan Aruch says you put the arla b'choil, zok the Ramah Hagah, v'chein roikikin dam ha'matzitza ala offer. Not just the arla, also the matzitza. So it's a shaila. You take a look in the Maril. The Maril brings two menhagim. Some say you do it. Some say you don't do it. What we mentioned earlier, that the reason to bury the orlo is because the offers kemizbeach, and the orlo is kekarbon. Every carbon has dam, and therefore that's the reason to put also the dam hamatzitza, to put dam. It's kezuriko, you put it on the mizbeach. Ubahisafa, where's the dam coming from? From the mitzitza b'peh, and the mouth is keklisharis. That's the reason, if you have the girs and the medrash, to also put makan amru, to also put the dam hamatzitza, is also because the zrika sadam lebezbeach. Just to conclude, just like we spoke about putting the orlo ba'offer on Shabbos, and we spoke about the offer is not muktzah, what's about putting the dam hamatzitza into offer b'Shabbos? The Chaim HaKadosh, whose yard site is today, in a Sefer Rishon LeTzion says that it's asur to do on Shabbos. It may be going into one of the lamates malachas of Megabel. Putting water into flour could be a shaila of a deraisa, one of the lamates malachas of Megabel. And he says, even though Lamaisa we don't paskin like Shitas Rabbi, but a Isser miuika, he holds that it's Aser. Lamaisa miidach, the Yad Shol says that it's mutter. So we have a machloikis. Just to sum up this week's Parsha, Mimon Afar Yaakov, the Minig, the Medrash says, brought la halacha to bury the orlo. We do that even on Shabbos. And then there's another chelik over here, which is a shaila in the Medrash, if also to put the dam hamatzitza into the offer. And here we have over here a shaila, a machloikis, if that you could do on Shabbos. Have a wonderful Shabbos.